Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Gas is on the Right. No, he's got a chance to win the race.
I think that might have been like one of the cleanest hits I've ever seen in a NASCAR fight.
Side Rick. Down the back. Oh! Into the wall hard goes Ryan Blaney.
And he finally came to a stop. And it was just dead silent.
I said this last week, and I'm going to keep reiterating it. Live with the decisions you make. Drive by the decisions you make. Don't change up your style, but also just don't be dumb.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Gas is on the Right podcast. This is the Richmond edition. We had just a little bit of action go on this weekend.
Yeah, it
Alan,
seemed
did
like a
anything
quiet
exciting
weekend.
happen?
It was a quiet weekend in my opinion. Green flag racing, short track racing, cars being used as battering rams, bumpers being thrown. I mean, nothing major.
Just casual NASCAR
A little bit of a little bit of jousting with bumpers.
Yeah, for sure. A battering ram of a car. So, dive us right in.
So let's jump right into that Xfinity race where Joey Gase got spun by Dawson Cram and proceeded to rip the bumper off of his car and chunk it at Dawson Cram's car under caution.
Yeah.
Alan, you got the video for that?
Oh, I do. We'll start off fresh with a video. I mean, just snatch and grab.
Straight up.
Nice strut. Beautiful form.
Nice form. Yeah,
Beautiful form.
I mean, great aim.
Yeah.
Right up the windshield.
Caught the windshield, scratched up a lot of the tear-offs. I think the goal was the window, though, if I'm going to be honest.
I think it was the windshield. I think that was his
Yeah,
goal.
if he'd have got it inside the car, that would have been perfect.
Been a shot. But yeah, so Joey Gase with a torn-up race car, not really a front-running guy. He's kind of a mid to back-of-pack race car driver, sponsoring his own car, paying for his own team. A lot of his own money invested into that. So I understand the frustration. I think that he had stated it was like $60,000 worth of damage is what it's going to cost him.
What?
And he's having issues getting 2 cars in
extra. Yeah, and then tack on an extra $5,000 by NASCAR for fining him.
You took that
because he
right
walked
out of my
across
mouth.
the track into oncoming traffic. He's also, if there's any bail bondsmen watching, he said that he would like a bail bondsman to sponsor him for the next race.
Yeah.
On Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah, but, with that fine, I'll start with you, Emily. Do you believe that he should have been fined by NASCAR in that sense? I mean, the big thing, we've seen helmet throws, we've seen Hans device, we've seen that. First time we've really seen a panel. But I do think that there's a key measure in this one that's a little different.
I mean, definitely for being, not necessarily being thrown, but I think for running down the track the way he did. He chased the race car to throw it at the car.
Yeah, I mean, he's all the way down there in the bottom of the turn. It's not going to go good for you. So, thoughts on your end, Daniel? Or do you think the $60,000 of damage was enough?
Well, the thing is, if that was anybody else, they would get fined. I think the people were wanting him to not get fined due to the fact that he is a smaller team and can't really afford to fix his race car or pay the fine. So I think that was the aspect of people not wanting him to get fined, but you got to call balls and strikes, which obviously once we get into the cup race, we'll realize that NASCAR doesn't do that. But,
yeah.
I mean, I agree that he should have been fined because, I mean, obviously the reason they're so strict about that is because somebody walked down a hot track and got hit by a car and died. So that's why they don't want that to happen. So that's a big no-no. So there's got to be some kind of repercussion for that besides, I know you're a small team, so just a little slap on the wrist. There's got to be that fine. Obviously, I think that's a small fine for that compared to what they probably would find a bigger team. Mm-hmm. So I think they did cut him slack there, but they had to still say, hey, it's not okay. We're going to fine you. And that's what he got. So,
What I don't understand is you kind of mentioned this is in cup racing they have a hard time calling balls balls and strikes. But in this case they had no problem doing that. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because he's a smaller team? Do you think it's because they were kind of
no,
called out last
no,
week for that?
no. I mean, look at the incident where Reddick wrecked Dylan last year. What did he throw his helmet or his Hans at him?
Through his
I
helmet.
can't remember.
Mhm.
Yeah, he threw his helmet, but he stayed on the apron away from all the cars.
Hmm.
He didn't walk up into the hot track or walk down towards the. In this case, all the cars were down lower to the apron. He didn't walk down the track or come up the track. He stayed where he was, around all the safety crews, and made a baseball throw from there, which he missed. But you know, I think that's the difference. Is if he wanted to throw that bumper cover, go ahead, but do it from the area where the safety crews are. I think that's what NASCAR's trying to get across there by finding him. Don't
Yeah.
walk across a hot track.
Yeah. Stay off the hot track.
You want to throw something at somebody, do it obviously not from the hot track.
Well, hold on one second. There we
Sorry,
go.
we were opening back up. the
So
notes.
that was, I think that's probably the most eventful storyline out of the Xfinity series. So before we get too much into the Cup series, go ahead.
Oh. Um. So this year, I mean, I guess we've had it in past years. Obviously, last year with Dirt Bristol, we had the Cup Series being scheduled on Easter Sunday. Now, we did see a dip in not ratings, in viewership this past week. We had 3.31 million this year compared to 3.45 at Bristol last year on Easter. Do y'all feel like they should have done a doubleheader on Saturday or left the race on Sunday?
I mean, if you got people there at 6 o'clock on Saturday morning and ran the Xfinity race at noon, why not run the Cup race at 4 and then everybody goes home for Easter? Or run the Xfinity race Friday and run the Cup race Saturday and everybody goes home for Easter? I think obviously the ratings took a dip because the way where they're racing is in the Bible Belt of the country, and people aren't going to support racing on Easter. Yeah, basketball plays on Easter, but they've always played on Easter, regardless of what holidays it is. NASCAR is more family oriented, and obviously, they're doing it in the primetime slot on Sunday afternoon for Easter, which I thought might have gave them the bump in ratings, but because it was a more convenient time, everybody's kind of done with all their activities and whatever.
Right.
Right.
But I don't, I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like it. I would rather them just race on Saturday night. Obviously, Saturday night's not an ideal time slot either. That's why the only race that's on Saturday night is Daytona, because that's the only one that can draw views in. But
I mean,
or just don't race on Easter weekend at all.
yeah. I mean, doing that would be probably one way to do it. Just make that a off weekend in general. But
Hmm.
I don't think a Saturday doubleheader would be a problem because you got to look at it this way. On a different circumstances with it not being Easter, and this may not be everybody's case or everybody's truth, but most people are going to be in on Saturday night coming up on Easter because normally people are going to sunrise services, people are going to services, and Sunday morning services. So they're going to be trying to get up early, so they're going to go to bed early. So you do a 6 p.m. race on a Saturday for the Cup Series on Easter weekend. That gets all your team's drivers and everything home for the most part Sunday morning. And then they have their full day. They don't have to fly back to the track like they did this week. The ones that did go home after Saturday's Xfinity race. And I think it could draw the views because you're still in a primetime slot. And obviously, I will say I still think that Bristol Dirt was gimmicky enough to draw in views. But
Hmm.
for the Richmond race, I think this is still a bump in ratings comparatively year over year, except for the fact of, I mean, the 4 to the 3.3 in reality is not a bad drop comparatively,
Yeah. Well,
especially
I
for it
don't know.
being Richmond.
It's still, I mean, it's still lower than any race we've had so far this year, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, do you
Yeah.
really think that Bristol was still that gimmicky last year?
I
Yeah.
think it still was because the Coliseum's still gimmicky, but I
That
think
is
it had
true.
definitely its charm had obviously worn off.
I feel like everyone was over it by last year. Obviously, because we got, you know,
Pretty low ratings for
Even
what's
Bristol
supposed to be
was
a
over
marketing
it.
event.
They were throwing shots at it for their marketing for the spring race.
Right. So, but yeah, no, I mean a Saturday doubleheader, I think would be beneficial. I think your attendance would be up. I think that your viewership would be up, especially if you sold a package ticket.
Well,
The
I
only
mean,
thing
that'd be
is
the
you
only
lose an
tickets
extra day
I'd
of
sell.
vending.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be the only ticket I'd sell is a package ticket. Hey, here's this one ticket. This gets you the cup race,
Hmm.
the Xfinity race, cup practice qualifying, Xfinity. And
right. Do you feel like, I mean, you said something about low attendance. Do you feel like, let's say they did do a Saturday doubleheader and they did sell a package ticket, do you feel like that would really bump up attendance?
I think so because people love to get the biggest bang for their buck. In the sense, I mean, these days everybody doesn't want to spend $1 unless they get 50 cents back. So you get two for the price of one. You get two races, qualifying and practice, all in one day. I mean, that's a lot of cars on the track. That's a lot of different things going on. So I think it's worth it for the ticket side of things. And it's not like it's a Talladega or Daytona where it needs to be a 3-day event because of the outside activities that happen after the racing hours and the racing times. So it's Richmond. And granted,
Yeah.
no discredit to their tailgating or anything. I've never been, so I couldn't tell you. But I do know that if you really look at it comparatively to like a Talladega, I mean, you pass Talladega on 20 and all you see is camping fields. So, and they're normally full when it comes to race weekend. But I think another thing on the attendance side, real quick, is I think we may have seen a lower drop in attendance is because people didn't want to get out in the fear that the race was going to be postponed too. Because if you want to watch
I
NASCAR
mean-
or know where NASCAR is, you just got to look at a radar and find the clouds and the rain cells, and you'll find NASCAR.
Yeah, I think the rain played a big factor in attendance, as well as not a lot of people are going to show up to a race on Easter. They're going to be at home with their families.
I
Not a
drove
lot
a
of
race
people
on
are going to
Easter.
drag their whole family to a race. You know?
Right. And because, I mean, that's a
Unless
lot,
you're
especially
Alan.
being a 6 p.m. start time, so probably a 9 to 10 o'clock finish. You're looking at getting home around midnight on a non-holiday weekend.
Yep. Well, it's a holiday.
Well, I mean, like a Monday holiday weekend, not a Labor Day
Yeah, not
or
a
a Memorial Day.
not a 3-day weekend.
Yeah. So, because
Yeah,
you're
that's a
looking
whole
at
different
like
story.
Charlotte runs in the afternoon on Sunday for the Coke 600, but Monday's
But
Memorial Day.
everybody's off Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of evils there. Now cutting it out altogether, that's fine too. I mean, in all reality, cut out Easter weekend, make it one of the off weekends. While yes, it's early in the season. I mean, we have 2 off weekends this year, anyways, and it pushed the Cup
Yes.
schedule back
Yeah,
a week
for the
For the
Olympics.
Olympics.
for the Olympics. So you just same thing, just have 2 off weekends, Easter and then whatever other weekend throughout the season that you decide.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things to where they're talking about Richmond might lose a date. Well, if Richmond's going to lose a date, don't replace it with anything. You know, or well, I guess they got to replace it for the 36-week schedule. Never mind. But I'm saying like this weekend, don't replace it anything this weekend. Just let this be an open date next year.
Right.
Because for the longest time, NASCAR had the 2 off weeks, Easter and Mother's Day.
Mm-hmm.
And why change? You know,
Well,
Like,
more
obviously,
racing.
this is, well,
A
this is
longer
their
off
lowest-
season, sorry.
yeah, a week longer.
Yeah.
A week is a week.
Yeah. I think
So-
it gives you a nice break at the beginning of the season to have those two before you go. Because now, they're going to go into an 18 race stretch, which I guess they're splitting it up pretty even, 18-18, but before it was like 10-10, 16, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So going off of what you said about the rain, they did start in the rain this weekend, or not necessarily this weekend. This Sunday, Cup did. So this was something that I asked Alan for clarification on Sunday because I didn't quite understand what they were doing or how the cautions would work. So NASCAR called a competition caution 30 laps in to have non-competitive pit stops to put on slick tires. Do y'all feel like they should have let the teams decide when to put those on?
Yeah, but it's hard to do that when pit road's not ready. Like, I think if they were
think
going to go
that was a
green, they
big
should have had pit road. They should have had pit road ready to have competitive pit stops to not have to stop the race. So we're going back to slicks, non-competitive stop. We're going to try and drive the pit road a little bit, and then at the end of the stage, they have a caution with like 7 laps to go, and they're like, all right, we're just going to run this out and let the jet drivers go on pit road and drive pit road the rest of the way to where we can have competitive cautions. They should have done that before the race even started.
Yeah.
And then that way you don't have the non-competitive pit stops. NASCAR didn't have to call a competition caution then, and then that would have made that race from where it was on the Clux poll was 51-49. That probably would have made it 61-39. You know, just having that extra strategy in there. But this is the first time NASCAR's raced wet weather tires on an oval ever. So, you know,
Right.
you got to cut them a little. Obviously, I'm going to cut them some slack because of that. Like, if they did this all the time, they'd be like, "Oh, that's stupid," you know.
Right.
But it's easy on Wednesday night to say that was dumb. You know, obviously,
Right.
I'm sure there's a lot of things they would have done differently too. You know, which I'm sure that's one of them. Is just went ahead and had pit road ready to go before they started the race. That way, teams could have let it play out. You know.
Yeah. So, a little dead
What do you
space in
think,
here.
Alan?
Yeah, I was waiting on you to like.
Well, nobody led me into
Before
it, so I was
I-
just kind of like, well, all right. No,
Should
I mean,
go? Should I stay?
so obviously NASCAR can't drive pit road while the track is green because of the fact of if there's some type of emergency tire, loose lug, something happens, car spins out. There's a lot of different things where somebody may have to get to pit road immediately, and that would cause a big issue out of that. But I definitely think that they should have put more focus and emphasis on pit road, especially with it being a short track. So they were talking about, Denny talked about, well, the grids on pit road. Well, make adjustments. I mean, and this is something they can do moving
Stage them on
forward
the
too.
racetrack.
Yeah, stage them right there on the front stretch, and that's where you can put them. You know, that you make that your grid, your makeshift grid, because then you can keep running the jet dryers on pit road to get the pit road dry for competitive
During
pit
all the
stops.
pace laps and stuff.
So
They have plenty of time before the race started to work on that, you know, because I don't even know if when they were doing the pace laps, I don't think I ever saw any jet dryers even on pit road.
yeah, no, I don't think there was any.
That would have been my main focus. Like, hey, eventually we're gonna have to come down pit road, and there's puddles down here, you know,
Right.
like we need to get that solved before we get cars down here. That would have been the thing I was focused on the most is pit road because obviously they're comfortable going in the damp on the racetrack with the wet weather tires. So let's get pit road to where they can come down here and not worry about hitting a puddle, sliding, and taking somebody out, and us having to cut the race short. You know.
Right. Yeah.
That got really dark really fast.
I think that was everybody's biggest concern is you overslide your pick box and you're You're taking out a tire carrier.
Well, I will be honest, like, I thought of that too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my biggest thought was, like, when they first started the race, I was like, what if something happens and they have to go down pit road? They have no choice but to pit.
Yeah, which that'd have been
And
sad
then
too.
that just...
Yeah, it'd have been sad too if somebody blew a tire, like in the first couple laps of the race, or something happened, they had to come down pit road, and it's basically like you have to call the caution at that point.
That was my biggest thing is get pit road ready before we go start the race. Period. So.
Right.
Yeah,
But-
of like have all of your boxes checked before you start racing. Make sure in any situation you are prepared. You can't just not have a pit road.
Yeah, this is the only time where I think I'll cut NASCAR more of a break because it was one of the first times.
I
But
do
next time
agree.
you have to have a better plan.
Yeah,
You
next
gotta
time
learn
you
from
need to
it.
come up with something better. But we'll give you
Yeah,
some
you
slack
definitely
this
got to be
time.
prepared. Better prepared next time. Well, there's always Martinsville.
Yeah, this weekend.
I think there's rain in the forecast.
I was gonna say, is there any rain in the forecast?
I think
So-
so first. Or maybe it's Monday, Tuesday, but you can never tell.
Let's see.
Let's
But-
see here.
I mean, ill-timed cautions were the storyline of the race, especially in stage 1 and stage 2, because obviously Larson pretty much dominated stage 1, and then the pit cycles got going during stage 2, and Kyle Busch grazed the wall, and NASCAR decided to throw out a caution. And I know the main theme of this year is everybody saying, well, NASCAR doesn't want to throw cautions during the pit cycle, but at a place like Richmond where it runs green so long, it's not like it was in the middle of the pit cycle because everyone had pitted. It was just in the middle of a strategy run, and it screwed some people's strategy. But Alan, you got the video for that too, don't you?
For the caution.
Yeah.
The fit.
So it looks like what I'd presume happened is he locked up going into 1, got into some of the wetter part of the track that's still, because you can see the color difference in the track, and
Oh yeah, you can see how dark it is up there towards the top.
the car just went straight, and that's just because the track was wet. He was going through the wet, and that's what happened. But look at how quick the caution light comes on.
Yeah, the car definitely went straight.
He touched the
Yeah,
wall,
he touched it.
and the caution light comes on.
He was already out of the wall before the caution light comes on, if you watch really closely. He's already coming off of the wall.
Right there. Caution
Yeah,
light's
but
on.
you can that second. It's like the second they saw him hit the wall, they just went ahead and hit it because they don't know. And this is one of those things to where it kind of sucks for everybody that got screwed in that pit cycle, but it's also one of those things to where this race did have a lot of unknowns because it was going from the wet to the dry. Obviously, they're back on slicks, but the track's still wet in some places, so they didn't know if he did get in the wet, if he's about to have a completely destroyed car, or if he had a tire go down, or if he had a tire fall off, or I think it was just one of those reactionary things. They're like, oh, car in the wall, ding, because there are so many unknowns in the race. They're a little panicky because they didn't know, because like we said, this is the first time they've ever done that,
So-
Yeah, but like me and Alan were talking about, if you compare that to when Suarez spun out, they didn't throw the caution until they realized that he wasn't going to save it. Like they threw the caution pretty late in Suarez versus this.
So yeah, once Suarez's nose actually started to hook in, and that nose he wasn't driving through the turn, but more or less just trying to get the car off the wall at that point, is when they threw his caution. But he'd already thrown up so much tire smoke.
Yeah.
But then Kyle Busch dinks the wall,
And they're like, oh crap,
and
hold
it's
on.
a caution. The whole thing that just ticks me off about it is I love the strategy portion of this, because that's what you're going to get at Richmond. You're going to get strategy.
Yeah, that's the
And-
only thing that makes Richmond interesting is the strategy.
It ruined it for me. It ruined the race. especially stage 2. It made it interesting that Bowman was racing the leaders for the Lucky Dog after he had a top 5 car all day.
Yeah, well, he had that
But-
bad pit stop too, so that had him further back too. So that also, I mean, that would probably would have been the downfall of his day, but it didn't help that caution came out for sure. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's just one of those things of like it put a sour taste in my mouth from this weekend
It really did.
because I was enjoying the 2-stop to the 1-stop, because the 2-stop you were looking at 20 more laps max is what they were saying on the broadcast, and what Larry Max was saying on the broadcast was you have about 20 more laps before they're going to pit again, and we're going to see how this cycle pays off. And we never got to see how it worked, because then when you went to stage 3, nobody ran long. I mean, they ran maybe 5
Christopher
laps.
Bell did.
So,
Christopher Bell did, but then he got a speeding penalty, and that kind
but
of
your one guy that
ruined
ran
his
long
day.
got a speeding
Well,
penalty. So
somebody else did it, but they just weren't fast. Somebody else did. I can't remember, but Denny did on the final stop, because Truex and Nagano pitted, and he's like, "Well, I'm just going to run a couple more laps, and then come out with fresher tires and see if I can track him down."
yeah. So, but by the time he talked about it on his podcast, by the time he caught Logano, he'd already used up his stuff, and there was no advantage at that point. So,
Well, it's because he got behind him, and the way those cars are, and the way the tire is, once that tire gets hot, because it's weird. I've listened to a couple different podcasts this week, and it's weird how they're explaining that these tires aren't. I guess there's a difference between tires wearing and tires falling off, and apparently there's not a lot of wear on these tires. It's just fall off, and everybody falls off at the same pace. So it doesn't matter your driving style. All the tires are just falling off lap by lap, not how you're driving.
yeah,
So apparently there's a difference in that, you know.
right.
So I think it's just one of those things to where Goodyear. I was like, who makes the tires? I was having a brain fart. Where Goodyear's just got to be a little bit more aggressive on a place like Richmond and Phoenix, you know.
Right.
Have they said which tire they're going to run this week at Martinsville? Are they running a Bristol tire or a Richmond tire, or
This
a
is going to
completely different
be,
tire?
if I remember correctly, this will be the same tire that is ran at Richmond and Phoenix, and the same package.
So probably going to see the exact same thing this weekend. You know, it's going to come down to, if there's not a lot of cautions, just strategy of who decides to run 10 laps longer than somebody else, you know?
Right.
Right.
So, well, from there, we have we talked a little bit about Suarez going around. But apparently he ticked off a lot of people this weekend. Barry dumped him. Gibbs threatened to dump him. But then Suarez did make a comment about Josh Berry and about their post-race chat. If I think Emily has that comment there.
See, so Barry says, hold on, I have to get my announcer voice on. He spins me out in stage 1. We're not even in the bottom of the racetrack, just having a conversation. I want to just race him the same way. We're good, but if tomorrow that happens the other way around, there won't be any conversation because he's going to be expecting it.
That was Suarez.
Oh wait, that was
Berry.
Suarez. Sorry, I read it wrong. I was halfway through that quote before I realized that was definitely Suarez.
Listen to what you mean, not to what you say.
There you go. There you go.
So, yeah, we're starting to see a lot more tempers flare this year than we've seen in the past few years. And it's nice and refreshing. It does create some good storylines, some good things to talk about, some good things to watch. I mean, we're still waiting on the Bush Bell. We'll see when that comes up.
You didn't watch the broadcast enough. They squashed their beef. Nothing's happening.
Oh, did they?
Mhm. I told you. I told you. You don't listen.
So, but yeah, we're seeing It's nice to see some things though. It's nice to see some things.
So,
Yeah, I mean, aggression brings storyline, gives us something to talk about, which hadn't really been a shortage of things to talk about this year.
That's true.
So,
so with that, we have Truex dominating until the last 2 laps. Then we have Larson, and then we have Bubba finishing Larson off and bringing out the caution.
Yeah.
I think
But like that was
Larson got a little loose.
Yeah, Larson got a little loose, and then Bubba actually finishes him off.
Yeah, Bubba doesn't anticipate him getting loose.
Pause.
Did y'all see their post-race thing, by the way?
Yeah, I saw a little snippet
Yeah,
of it.
Bubba just came up and was like, I didn't mean to do that, man. Like, sorry. And Larson's like, no, we're cool. And he's like, yeah, sorry. Haha. And then just walks away.
Karma. Yeah, he said, my bad, I didn't mean to do that. Karma got me immediately. If you get me back, I know it's coming and we're good.
Yeah. Which they've had their little spats here and there. Think back to Las Vegas 22, and Bubba right hooking them into the wall at like 190.
And then tried to right hook him in the infield too.
Yeah, and missed him.
Yeah.
A swing and a miss. But yeah, that quite an untimely caution. But I think I saw the stat is it's been either 13 races since the last green white checkered for a Cup Series race.
Yeah, they've been racing pretty clean this year.
So yeah, 13 races since then.
I feel like there's a lot of threats of revenge this year, but nothing really happening as far as actual revenge. Does that make sense?
Oh, that's the history of NASCAR.
I mean, I know that's the history of NASCAR,
drivers
but
all the time are like, "I'm gonna get him back," and they
never
do.
does.
Never touches them.
I just feel like we're seeing a lot more of that this year.
So a lot more calamity this year too, though. But the racing has also been a lot better this year than in recent comparison.
Yeah, it really. Besides Phoenix, and even like people are gonna rag on this weekend, but I really like Richmond. I really like that race.
I like the kind of breakup that it does. So you go from, especially this year, you go from 2 super speedways to Vegas to Phoenix, or Phoenix and Vegas, whichever
or whatever
order.
you want to call it.
But then you come back to Bristol, and it's just an absolute action-packed. Then Coda, with the different things going on there and being a road course, and then coming into Richmond, and it's just kind of like just a straight strategy short track. So there's not as much beating and banging. It's like a 1.5 lane track, so it's going to be a lot of riding around. But you can kind of see how you let the teams. It becomes a team sport at Richmond, not just either the driver or the crew or fighting for position. It really comes down to track position and how well can you execute, and if your strategy will pay off.
And that's what, if you go into the Richmond race with the reality of that's what Richmond's going to be, it's a pretty good race with all things considered. You know? Like when you turn Richmond on, I'm going to see a long green flag run and a lot of different strategies playing out. I'm not expecting to see a 3-wide pass for the lead. I'm just trying to see if when whoever comes out of the pits 10 laps later than whoever, how long does it take him to catch him? And when he catches him, can he pass him? It's just like that cat and mouse game all race. Yeah. And that's what I like Richmond. So, I mean, barring the Phoenix race, I think every race has been a good race so far this year.
I concur.
I agree.
I'm a little worried about Martinsville, though.
So my only worry about Martinsville is having these back-to-back purist.
Same package, same tires, same, essentially same race.
Yeah, a purist race. So
yeah, because at Martinsville,
race.
you want to see a little bit more of that beating and banging, and with the package and tire that you have right now is going to look like a bunch of parade laps. Yeah, that's my fear, is that we're about to get a long parade at Martinsville. They're going to start throwing some candy out, you know?
So throwing hot dogs out.
Yeah, hot dogs at Martinsville.
So, well, let's get back on track here.
I was gonna
Reel
say,
us back in.
going off a little bit of strategy, trying to tie it into what y'all were just talking about. We have Hamlin wins the race kind of off of pit road. Don't necessarily agree with this, but we'll get into why I don't agree with that. He had an 8.9 second pit stop versus Truex and Larson having a 10.2. Now that also leads me into saying that Hamlin did win the race, if no one knew that yet.
If you didn't know that, where have you
If
been?
you didn't
Because
know
it's
that-
been the hottest topic other than a bumper cover being thrown.
We'll ask the golden question here in just a second. Actually, I can go ahead and ask it now. So the golden question is, do you think that he jumped the restart?
I think this is going to be a unanimous yes,
Yeah.
because he also admitted he jumped the restart.
That's exactly
We're a
what
little.
I
If
said.
this was recorded on a Monday, that might be a little bit more of a hot topic, but it's pretty unanimous. Elton Sawyers came out and said, "Yeah, he jumped the restart." Everybody knows he jumped the restart by now.
Let's just discuss that for a second, though.
But let's
You
take a look.
literally have...
Yeah. Well,
Oh, dang it. I
Well,
wanted to get into it
yeah.
so bad.
We'll start and just show it, just in case you haven't seen it. So Denny's on the inside. This is inside Martin Truex's car. You see Denny jump, and then Martin catches up. You'll actually hear Martin's radio saying that he jumped. But we'll pull it here to, if you look on the screen, let's see, let me get to it. We're going to go very slow through this. You'll see the red on the wall coming up to that blue on the wall is where the restart zone is. And right here where it says Geico is a restart zone, where it starts. And you will see right here is where Hamlin goes ahead and jumps prior to that zone.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he is gone. So
Goodbye.
there's obviously he admitted to it. Everybody's admitted to it. The thing that's just bad, and it's just really it just makes NASCAR look bad as a whole, is the fact that they admitted it.
The fact that they admitted, they were like, yeah, we know he jumped it. And then you
They're
have Denny
acting
on his podcast
And they're
being
acting like nothing's wrong with the fact that he jumped it.
yeah, he
Yeah.
was like, I'm not even looking ahead of me. I'm not even looking at the restart zone. I'm looking out of my peripheral and, out of my side mirror. And I see him kind of inch. And so I jump. And I'm like, okay, so you just admitted. And then, NASCAR's like, yeah, we know he jumped it. But, again, it's a whole case of not calling balls as balls and strikes as strikes.
Yeah, and I mean, even in Elton Sawyer's comments, he said if that was lap 40 or lap 300, that would have been called a little bit differently. And it's like, well, why does it matter if it's lap 300 or lap 398? What's the difference?
The other
on
thing
how you
is
call that differently.
They've had late race restarts or green white checkered restarts last year that went under review for people getting out of line.
Right.
So why can't they do it for a jump? But also, if they haven't
Yeah.
enforced it, that's on them. Now, this whole entire debacle makes me think you go back to early 2023 to where you can go anywhere in the box. The leader controls the race. You can go from anywhere in the box. Because they're talking about the competitive advantage. And yes, there is a competitive advantage at that point for jumping at being the control car and choosing when to fire. But if you go back to that rule, everybody's, you may have a, what was it, Nashville situation where they bottleneck, but it took them 6-7 races into the season before they had an accident like that happen. But that gives the leader parameters that they have to follow, a hard black and white rule to follow versus this gray area of, well, you can jump 200 feet prior. But just go back to the early 2023 rules of the restart zone, where when you're inside the white lines, you can go immediately, you can go halfway, you can go at the end of the box, and that's how you gain your competitive advantage.
Yeah, I think there should just be the start of a restart zone, and the end of it is the start finish line. And then that eliminates all the rolling around the leader games, because if you have that, almost doubles the restart zone. So that puts a lot more control back into the leader, because that's what Denny's main complaint was. Is he said, I'm looking in my mirror and I see Logano laying back, and I look to the right and I see Truex laying back on my door. And he said, I know that whenever I go, both of them are about to have a run on me. Logano is going to take me to the bottom. Truex is going to take me around the outside, and I'm going to be screwed. And he said, so I saw them both start to creep up, and I just went. He admitted I wasn't even paying attention to the restart zone. I was just paying attention to how they were rolling me, and I took off when they weren't ready,
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of games that go on the restarts, which I think is entertaining, but
Yeah.
the
Well, like you said,
It's
you
just-
get a mile an hour on the restart. You're going to carry that mile an hour to turn one.
whole front straightaway.
So, and
Right.
again, at the speeds that they're going and the times, the seconds that matter, a mile an hour is a big difference. That's being on the door and being nose to nose. So,
Yeah, especially if when you're rolling, getting that mile an hour, when you start at the restart zone nose to nose, by the time you get to the end of the straightaway, you just about got your car length with that mile an hour, if not more, assuming that the leader doesn't spin tires or anything. It's tricky. Well, honestly, it's not tricky. That's pretty cut and dry. The lines, it's not like when they didn't have the lines on the racetrack and it was just the markings on the wall, and it's hard to
Right.
tell when the inside car's there. But the line's pretty definitive. Like, if you're not going to say this is the restart zone that you go in and call it off that, what's the point in having the lines there?
What's the point?
yeah,
of
what's the
having
point in
the
Geico
restart
sponsorship?
Yeah.
zone? Why are they even
that's-
sponsoring?
But I think Joey Logano had some good comments about it on Sirius XM. He said, obviously, I want it to happen because it'd be very beneficial for me if, they decided to do something. He said,
Right.
but if that happens to me next week, I'm going to be pissed. If they black flag me for that, I'm going to be extremely pissed if something like that happens and they call me for it. So
Yeah.
the big question now is NASCAR's like, we made a oop, but what do they do about it?
See,
Do they call the oop next time it happens, or do they let the same thing happen again?
I don't think you can
It
let the
just
same thing
depends.
happen.
No, because the problem is you're opening that door wide open. Because if they're saying, well, the restart zone's relative. Okay, the second the pace car pulls off, I'm going to gas it up and go. The second the pace cars clear the racetrack, I'm gone. No one's going to be ready. You know what I mean? And then they're going to be like, well, it's relative. And it's like, nah, he went 3 football fields before the restart zone, So they gotta obviously, it's pretty cut and dry now, but they decided to go in the gray area for this one just because, well, obviously on the broadcast it was freaking awful because when the restart happened, the camera didn't move. I just saw everybody coming through the restart zone, and I'm like, well, that's not doing me any good. This is overtime, and I'm not watching the leaders. Why do I care about who's in 30th? So you
Yeah.
didn't even get to see the jump on the restart because they kept the camera in turn 3. Like, I don't care about who's running 30th. What does that have to do with anything?
So, I will say one more thing. My comment from last week aged poorly, where you asked, what about some other gray area rules in NASCAR?
That is true.
And I was like, I don't really think there's any. Well, thank you, NASCAR, for
Thank you for
expressing more of
proving
them.
us right, or I guess wrong in this situation.
Yeah, proving Alan wrong.
So, all right.
Well, I feel like after that, Truex got a little upset.
A little is an
You don't
understatement.
see
I
Martin
think.
Truex.
You
You don't
never
really
see
see
him
Martin
that mad.
Truex like that.
Yeah, Truex
Yeah.
got.
You
That
hear
is-
you hear him on the radio with his crew chief, but that's about it. You
I
never
didn't
see him
listen to
actually
his radio.
use his car as a pattern. Well, get towards the summer months where they have a little bit of a slump and him and his crew chief get going at it on the radio. That was a big theme last year of them putting on broadcast, was them two just cussing each other out completely
Yeah.
the whole race.
Yeah, it was oh, I got something in my eye.
Let's see. So, him and Larson get into it on the back stretch, and then the rest of the way around the track on the final lap. And I think, Alan, you have a video of it, right?
Yes. So here we go, guys.
I'm going to be honest, this cracked me up a little bit.
So you see Martin Truex door slam Larson there. So then Larson uses him up in turn 4, which that was Larson's words. And then uses him all the way up on the front stretch. And then Martin door slams him again, and then Larson runs him all the way off camera. So this is from Chase Elliott's
we're doing
onboard.
I was going to say, whose onboard camera is this?
So
I think a little bit of that frustration is, obviously they made some contact right there, and Truex was like, "What the heck, man?" I think a little bit of that also has to do with, I don't know if you remember earlier, it was after the, I think it was after stage, I think it was the stage 2 end caution when they came out of the pits, or maybe it was the first pit of stage 3. When they came out and Larson came out ahead of Truex and just completely cut him off, and Truex had to get out of it a little bit or else they would have collided. I think he was a little mad about that too. And he was mad that obviously it's not Larson's fault that he spun. It's Bubba's fault for spinning him. But he was the caution. And then he caused the caution, but he's also up there battling him for 3rd place.
Yeah.
It was just a
So
bunch
I'm sure
of
that's-
factors.
As Truex has led almost the entire race and not
Yeah,
won,
200
which
plus
he's done.
laps.
I think he said that's the 6th time that he's led over 100 laps at Richmond and not won the race.
Yeah, that's a bummer for him there.
Yeah. So
And
I think it was just cumulative. It was cumulative, and then when they made that contact, he's like, "God, eat."
All of his
So-
frustration at everyone.
Came out right there.
Yeah.
And then
And
just
then he went
to
and gave some bumper
continue,
taps to Hamlin.
I was going to say, to continue his, trail of unhappiness, he did some bumper taps to Hamlin on the cooldown lap. And you can see it. What I found funny is he bumped him twice and then just, dumped into pit road. Phew.
Yeah, you saw him he was moving down the backstretch too. I saw a funny post about that on Twitter or on X, whatever you want to call it, Elon Musk website. It said if this was 2022, Hamlin would be out for 4 to 6 weeks with a concussion for those taps. Because he hit him hard. He hit him hard. So
Yeah, Hamlin's probably in that moment. He's probably like, what did I do?
at first he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, thanks for giving me the
Yeah,
bump
thanks."
because I won," and then
He
he
thought
gets
it
hit
was
again.
love
And it's
taps.
He's like, hold on.
another tap, and it's like, wait a second.
Yeah, because at first glance, that's what I thought it was too. He's like, you got me, good job,
He hits me, but
And
he's
then-
funny.
Yeah. I think that might go
I'm
against
sorry, that
the
was...
community guidelines.
Oh yeah, that one. May need to bleep that one
We're
out
about
for
to
the.
We're about to get kicked off the live stream.
What do you mean? Truex just bumps Hamlin. Hamlin just thinks he's funny.
It's just a love tap. All right, I'm done.
All right,
I'm
moving on quickly. So Emily, obviously you won picking Truex with the picks. Alan decided to pick
I'm still stuck on.
Nemechek. We gotta get away from this quick. I'm gonna keep going. You guys keep laughing. Alan, you made a crappy choice to pick John Hunter Nemechek instead of Martin Truex and gave Emily a win.
I know,
And
right?
then I
Not as
chose.
crappy as my
I
joke.
chose. Yeah, We're moving on. I chose Christopher Bell, and he almost threw it away for me, but I finished second in this. So Emily's up 4-3-2 now. Alan ruined his average finish that I was raising him up for.
By 2 positions.
All right.
But y'all had a good comeback.
Our
So
average finishes.
right now, our averages finishes they came up a lot from last week. So
I was gonna say mine came up a
yeah,
lot.
yours came up a lot. I think you were the biggest mover. But I went to a 12.1. Daniel jumped to a 14.7 from a 16.7. I was at a 10.2 to a 12.1, so bad weekend for me. And then Emily came up from a 17.9, I think it was, to a 15.7. So,
Yeah, so I think mine and Emily's movement was pretty parallel, but
yeah, both
Alan's
with top
was
10s and
the
top
wrong
30.
way.
My worst finish on the season is in the 7th race. So I will take that. And it's still a
Well,
top 30.
Emily, who do you got for Martinsville?
Put me on the spot, why don't you?
Well, you did win last week.
Well, you won, so you have to go first.
Logano.
Oh, interesting pick. I'm going to take Josh Berry.
Josh Berry.
Who are you,
That was-
picking?
That was
Was
out
that
of my
yours?
pocket. Both of those are out of my pocket.
Were you going to pick Josh Berry?
I was gonna pick Josh Berry. Well, let me step back and punt. Let's go ahead and just do this and do it right.
Just pick
We're
Bush.
gonna go with Chase Briscoe.
Oh, dang. I was about to tell you to pick Bush.
Interesting. No.
So, but guys, remember before we get canceled to follow us on all of our social medias. We post every day, every week. Love for you to join us. And also, just a quick shout out: Daniel Harper picked Denny Hamlin during the live stream last week as his pick, and he won. So shout out to Daniel Harper, and he's got Ty Gibbs this week. So we'll go ahead and keep him in the loop because he won last week.
Do we want to go over the standings real quick before we?
Yes, before
And
we
let's
sign
look 'em
out,
up
we
real
will
quick.
go over the point standings. We'll just go straight playoff. Let's see here.
I was just gonna do. Okay. So playoff standings.
Or actually, we'll go driver. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna do driver standings
Playoff
because that's what I
standings
did
don't really
last
matter
week.
right now.
All right, so Truex is still in first, followed by Larson in second, Hamlin in third, Gibbs in fourth, Blaney in fifth, Bell sixth, Byron seventh, Elliott eighth, Chastain ninth, and Reddick 10. Hey, my early
Where's
season.
the next?
My too
Where's the
early
next
to
Ford
call.
in the standings?
Let's
So
see.
you got a Ford. Your first Ford is in fifth. Your next Ford is 12th with Chris Buescher, 85 points out. But we also saw a big change in the disparity between them this week, where your top 5 were within 20 points.
Ford's ran good.
Your top 5 is.
But now you're seeing your top 5 is spread out by 41 points. Where it was 30, it's now gone up. And you only have your top 3 are only spread by 20 points. And then after that, Ty Gibbs is 34 back. So, also, shout out to Gibbs, putting on quite the season thus far for his sophomore year. But with our way too early championship picks, I think we're all in the top 10. I think, Emily, you're rounding out the top 10 with Reddick, Daniel with Byron, and then myself with Hamlin fighting up there in the top 5. So
All I'm saying is our guys have wins. 2 of them.
we're about to go into summer mile and a halves and road courses. I would not be worried with Reddick.
Yeah.
So
I'm telling
But-
you, I see potential. When are we doing our next playoff picks? Are we going to do it at the beginning of playoffs?
yes,
Okay.
we will pick our 16. So, well, guys, make sure that you tune in every Wednesday night, 10:30. We'll be live streaming on Facebook, and then you can always catch us on all major podcasting networks the next day, and also on YouTube if you want to watch the video version and see all the clips that we're talking about, and us, I guess. So, we appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you guys
Most
next week.
importantly, us.
Yeah, 100%. Y'all have a good night.